turned 58 the day. I turned 58 the day everything I believed about life, marriage, and loyalty shattered. Quietly, without screams, without dramatic scenes, only with a polite knock at the door. My husband, Hassan, had been unusually restless all morning. He kept checking the clock, walking to the window, wiping his palms on his trousers. I thought he was planning a surprise party. I even teased him. "Is someone coming?" I asked, tapping his arm lightly. No, just thinking," he said with a shaky smile. I didn't push. After 30 years of marriage, you learn when a man's soul is trembling. You learn to read the silence between his breaths, but nothing prepared me for what happened at exactly 1:17 p.m. The doorbell rang. Hassan inhaled sharply. "They're here," he whispered. "They!" I repeated, confused. Before I could ask again, he opened the door, and my birthday ended. Standing there was a woman close to my age, elegant, composed, wearing the kind of careful smile a person uses before they step into danger. Beside her stood a young man, maybe 27, with Hassan's unmistakable eyes. And next to him, a girl in her early 20s, clutching a small bouquet of flowers. My stomach twisted. The woman spoke first. "Assalamu alaikum. I'm Amina," she said softly. We know this is difficult, but we couldn't hide forever." My gaze moved slowly from her face to the young man, then to Hassan. I didn't ask who they were. I already knew. But I waited. Because sometimes you must hear the truth from the lips of the betrayer to truly bury the illusion. Hassan stepped forward, his voice cracked. "Zara, these are my children." The room didn't spin. My heart didn't scream. My hands didn't tremble. I simply felt an incredible stillness inside me, like the calm before the earth splits open. He continued, as if rehearsed for years. "Amina and we were married 30 years ago, before you. It was arranged by my parents. I was too young, too foolish. I walked away from it and no one knew. No one except my brother." "And me," I said quietly. He froze. "What?" I smiled, a small, tired smile. "Hassan, you forget I wasn't always this quiet woman you think you successfully deceived. I knew something existed. I never knew the details, but I knew." His lips parted. You knew all these years?" "Yes," I shrugged lightly. "A woman always knows." Amina lowered her eyes. The young man looked away. The girl swallowed hard, still clutching the flowers. "So why didn't you ever confront me?" Hassan whispered. "Well," I said, stepping back politely. "Because I was waiting for my birthday, for this exact moment." I walked to the cabinet beside the sofa, the old wooden one my mother gave me as a wedding gift. I opened the bottom drawer and took out a small golden box wrapped in velvet. I held it gently. "This," I said, turning toward him, "is for you." Hassan blinked. "What is it?" "A gift," I said, placing it in his trembling hands. "Something I kept for 30 years. I turned to his hidden family and smiled kindly. "Please, come inside. You all must hear this too." They stepped in slowly, hesitant, unsure, as if crossing a bridge they feared might collapse beneath them. I gestured toward the sofa. "Sit, all of you." They obeyed. Hassan looked at the box as if it might explode. "Zara, what is inside?" I sat across from them and folded my hands calmly in my lap. "If you want to open it," I said gently, "you'll need to hear the story first." And so, on my 58th birthday, in a living room decorated with balloons I had blown myself, I began telling them a story I had carried in silence for 3 decades. A story darker and heavier than his betrayal. A story he never imagined existed. And as I spoke the first sentence, Hassan's face turned white. Because he realized I wasn't the only one who had been kept in the dark. He had no idea who I truly was. The room felt strangely small, as if the walls leaned closer to listen. Hassan sat stiffly, his fingers tightening around the velvet-wrapped box I'd placed in his lap. His secret children, whose very existence should have broken me, sat with the heavy discomfort of guests who had come to the wrong home. Amina kept her gaze low. The young man, Rayyan, shifted uneasily. The younger girl, Lena, stared at the bouquet she still held, petals trembling. I folded my hands and began. 30 years ago, I said softly, I wasn't the woman you think I was. Hassan flinched. Amina lifted her eyes. Rayyan and Lena looked at each other. What did they expect? A long-suffering, self-sacrificing wife. A woman who quietly accepted injustice for 3 decades? They had no idea. I leaned back in my chair, letting the years roll back inside me. Before I married you, Hassan, I continued, I was in love with someone your family destroyed. Hassan's eyes widened. Oh God, Zara, please don't. I didn't speak when you introduced your hidden family, I cut in calmly. Do me the same courtesy. He fell silent. Amina glanced at him, confused. I continued. Flashback. 30 years ago. I was 28 and freshly heartbroken when I met Hassan. Not just heartbroken, robbed. I had been engaged to a man named Adil, a quiet, brilliant soul who believed that respect mattered more than wealth or status. We planned a small, intimate wedding. Nothing extravagant, nothing dramatic. But someone didn't approve. Someone with the power to end things. And they did. When I refused marriage proposals from your relatives, I told Hassan, your uncle and brother found a way to ruin Adil's life, and mine. Hassan swallowed. I didn't know. You didn't care to know. My voice softened, not angry, just factual. Your family framed him in a false case, stole money, planted it in his shop, called the police. They knew he had no powerful friends, no money to fight. They destroyed him. Amina covered her mouth. Rayyan's brows knit together. Lena's eyes watered. I closed mine for a moment, remembering the night Adil held my hands through the jail bars. Zara, he whispered, don't cry. Don't let them win. I promised him I wouldn't. But I broke that promise, I whispered now. Because I married you, Hassan, the very family that ruined the man I loved. Hassan covered his face with his hands. I didn't know anything like this happened. People rarely ask about the blood their comfort is built upon, I said calmly. And your family made sure no one told you. The room fell silent. Only the ticking clock dared to speak. The box. I looked at the velvet-covered box resting in Hassan's lap. Inside this, I said, is something I kept hidden the same years you kept your family hidden. Hassan looked terrified to open it. Rayyan leaned forward slightly. Lena hugged the bouquet tighter. Amina took a breath, but said nothing. I continued. Before Adil was taken away, he slipped something into my hands. He said, this is for the day you find the courage to walk away from people who choose lies over love. I met Hassan's eyes, and for 30 years, I waited for that day. Hassan's voice broke. Zara, please, don't say you're leaving. I didn't respond. Instead, I nodded toward the box. Open it. His fingers trembled as he peeled away the velvet cloth. Slowly, he lifted the lid. A sharp gasp escaped him. Amina pressed her lips together. Rayyan exhaled shakily. Lena's eyes widened. Inside the box lay a single golden key tied with a red thread, a small, folded letter yellowed with age, and a photograph of a younger me, smiling beside a man whose hand rested protectively on mine. Adil? Hassan whispered. Yes. Hassan's shoulders caved. But why keep this? He asked weakly. Why? Why not move on? The corner of my mouth lifted slightly. more sad than angry. I did move on, Hassan. I married you. I built a home with you. I carried your burdens, cooked your meals, nursed you when you were sick. But I kept this box, because I always knew the day would come when I would need it. Rayan spoke softly for the first time. What is the key for? I turned to him gently. That key, I said, opens a house in the old part of the city. A house I bought secretly years ago, when I first suspected Hassan was hiding something, a house in my name. A house where I can go if my dignity ever required distance. Hassan's voice cracked. You planned to leave me? No, I said calmly. I planned to have a choice. Then I looked at Amina. At least your family didn't live by erasing women. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to come today, she whispered. But our son insisted he wanted to know his father. Rayan nodded. I've lived my whole life without him, he said. I just wanted him to acknowledge me once. Lena finally looked up. And I wanted to know why he kept us hidden. Were we shameful? Hassan's breath hitched. No, he said, reaching toward them but stopping midway. You aren't shameful. I was scared. Scared of what? I asked quietly. Losing comfort, reputation, or the wife who cooked and cared for you while you lived a double life? He had no answer. He didn't need one. The decision. I stood slowly, smoothing the folds of my dress. I don't hate any of you, I said gently. Not even you, Hassan. You created this family. They deserve honesty, not shadows. Amina wiped her tears. Rayan and Lena lowered their heads. But today, I continued, on my birthday, you gave me freedom disguised as heartbreak. Hassan stared at me helplessly. Zara, please, don't leave. I looked at him with a tenderness that comes only when love has finished dying peacefully. I haven't left, I whispered. But tonight, you won't decide my life. I will. And with the golden key in my hand, I walked toward the hallway. Not angrily, not dramatically, simply with the quiet dignity of a woman who had carried too much for too long. When I reached the door, I turned back. Tomorrow, I said softly, I will tell you all the rest, the part you don't know about Adil, about the truth your family buried, and why I waited 30 years. Rayan looked confused. Lena leaned forward anxiously. Amina held her breath. Hassan whispered, terrified. Zara, what truth? I gave him the faintest, most heartbreaking smile. The kind of truth, I said, that will change everything you believe about your past. And mine. Then I stepped out of the living room. And the door of 30 years finally opened. I didn't walk to the old house that night. I simply went to the guest room, closed the door, sat on the bed, and finally allowed myself to breathe. Not cry, not break. Just breathe. The kind of breath a woman takes after spending decades pretending her lungs were strong enough to carry disappointment. A breath that felt like an apology to my younger self. Outside the room, I heard muffled voices. Amina's gentle calm, Rayan's pain, Lena's soft confusion, and Hassan's frantic pacing. But none of their sounds entered me. For once, my silence belonged only to me. Flashback. The night. Everything was taken. I closed my eyes, and I was 28 again, standing outside the police station, my dupatta slipping off my shoulder. My tears refusing to fall because Adil always said, Zara, crying gives your pain a voice. Don't let others write your script. But that night, he cried, behind the bars, his hands gripping mine. Your marriage with me, he said in a cracked voice, was the only dream I had that wasn't poisoned by life. I shook my head desperately. I'll fix everything. Your shop, the case, your name. Just hold on. But Adil only smiled, soft and tragic. "I know who did this," he whispered. "Your future husband's family. They found out about us." My heart stopped. "Future husband?" He nodded. "They bribed people, threatened witnesses. They want you. They want you untouched by scandal." I felt my blood freeze. "But you'll fight." "No," he said gently. "I want you to live, Zara, even if that life isn't with me." The next morning, they transferred him. 2 days later, he was gone. They said suicide. I knew better. When grief takes everything from a man, people call it suicide. But when powerful families destroy him, they call it fate. I buried him myself. I didn't cry then. I didn't cry for years. Because silent women survive longer. The next morning, back to present. I woke early. My birthday balloons from yesterday still hung in the living room. Pathetic, cheerful lies. Sunlight filtered through the curtains as I brewed tea for myself. My movements were slow, deliberate, peaceful even. A woman's calm is most dangerous when it's earned through pain. Hassan entered the kitchen hesitantly. He looked 10 years older than he did yesterday. "Zara, good morning," he whispered. "It is," I said without looking at him. For the first time in a long time. He inhaled shakily. "They stayed the night, in the lounge." "I know." "Can we talk?" "Yes." But I didn't sit. He sat first. Guilt changes posture. His voice cracked. "I didn't know anything about a deal. I swear I didn't." "I know," I replied. "You were too comfortable to look closely at the world around you." He lowered his head. "I was going to tell you about them," he whispered. "I didn't want to lie forever." 30 years, I said, setting my cup down. "You call that not forever?" He had no answer. A moment later, as if gathering courage from the air around him, he whispered, "Please tell me the rest." I turned slightly so I could see his hollow, guilty eyes. "You want the truth now?" I asked softly. "After carrying your own truth like a loaded weapon for 3 decades?" He nodded, and so I began. The buried secret. "When Adil died," I said, "I didn't just bury him. I buried a secret with him." Hassan frowned. "A secret?" "Yes." "About the case?" "No." "About your relationship?" "Not exactly." He looked lost. I finally sat across from him. "Hassan," I said, "there is something you and your family never knew about that time." His throat tightened. "I'm listening." I didn't blink. I didn't hesitate. The truth had fermented inside me long enough. 2 weeks before Adil was arrested, I found out I was pregnant. Hassan gasped. His hand flew to his mouth. His shoulders jerked as if struck. I kept my voice steady. "Yes, I was carrying Adil's child." He shook his head, stunned. "I didn't know. You never told me." "You never asked," I replied calmly. "You never wanted to know who I was before you. You wanted a wife, not a story." He swallowed hard. What happened to the baby?" My chest rose slowly, then fell. "I lost him," I whispered, "the day I got the news of Adil's death." Hassan closed his eyes as if to shut out the pain. But the truth was an open wound, refusing to close. I continued. "At the hospital, a nurse asked me, 'Where's the father? Does he know?' And I said, 'No, he will never know.'" Hassan wiped his face. "Oh God, Zara, why didn't you tell someone? Anyone?" "I did," I said quietly. "I told your uncle." His eyes snapped open. "My uncle? Why him?" "Because he was the one who visited the shop, the one who asked questions about me, the one who threatened Adil before the police came." His breath caught. "Hassan, that man knew everything." I leaned closer, my voice low. He told me, mockingly, that no man wants a widow or a woman with a dead fiancé, that I should start fresh, that marrying into your family would give me protection. Hassan trembled. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said, but your ignorance didn't make my reality softer. We both heard the doorway shift. Amina stood there silently. Behind her, Rayan and Lena listened in stunned horror. Tears streamed down Lena's face. Rayan looked like he wanted to punch someone. Amina whispered, This is the truth your uncle died hiding. I nodded. Yes. Rayan stepped inside. What happened to Adil? He said shakily. And to your baby. That was injustice. Yes, I replied calmly. And injustice doesn't disappear just because the guilty grow old. Hassan looked at me with a broken expression. What do you want from me, Zara? I breathed deeply. What did I want? Freedom, revenge, peace, a choice? None felt complete. So I told him the truth. I want you to hear the rest, because there's one more thing you don't know. He stared at me, terrified. And I said the words that froze the room. Adil didn't die because your family destroyed him. They all stared, shocked, confused, waiting. I continued, slowly, painfully. He died because he saved someone whose name you've heard before. Hassan whispered. Who? I looked straight into his eyes and said, Amina. Amina gasped. Her hand flew to her chest. Her legs trembled. Rayan grabbed her arm. Lena covered her mouth. Hassan stared at me, unable to breathe. Yes, I said softly. Adil saved Amina's life, and that truth connects all of us more deeply than any of you ever imagined. Amina stood frozen, as if my words had reached into her past and pulled out a buried ghost. Her lips trembled. Her eyes widened. Her hand clutched her dupatta like a drowning woman grasping at air. Me? She whispered. Adil saved me? Rayan looked confused, but alert. Lena looked terrified. Hassan's eyes darted between Amina and me, panicked. I nodded slowly. Yes, Amina. He saved your life, and none of you even knew. She swallowed hard. Please tell me. So I did. Flashback. The night of fire. The past came back not as a memory, but as a storm. 30 years ago, before Hassan had 2 families, before I became a wife with quiet wounds. Amina was a young, newly married woman living in a small rental house with Hassan. Yes, Hassan's first wife. Back then, Amina was gentle, soft-spoken, and completely alone. Hassan rarely came home. His mother disapproved of Amina's family background. There were whispers of divorce. She lived under pressure so suffocating, even her breathing sounded apologetic. And then, one night, her kitchen stove exploded. Neighbors later said it was a faulty pipe. Some believed it was sabotage by relatives who wanted Hassan to remarry. Others whispered darker possibilities. But the truth was simpler. Amina ran out screaming, her clothes burning, collapsing on the wet street. And guess who pulled her out? Guess who ran inside the flaming kitchen, wrapped her in a blanket, and carried her out in his arms? Adil. My Adil. The same man Hassan's family destroyed. The same man taken from me. The same man who died never receiving justice. I inhaled slowly. He was there because his shop was next to your house, I told Amina. He heard the blast. He didn't think. He just ran. When he came out carrying you, half his arm was burned. Amina's face crumpled. Oh God! Rayan held her shoulders. Lena wiped her tears. I continued softly. Your neighbors said he saved your life, but the police case against him came right after. No one believed a man accused of theft could be a hero. Hassan looked shattered. My uncle, he told me Amina was alone that night. He told me... He lied, I said firmly. He twisted the story. He made Adil the criminal so he could push me into your life and push Amina out of yours. Amina turned to Hassan, pain burning her eyes. You left me, she whispered. You believed your uncle. You believed everyone but me. Hassan shook his head desperately. I didn't know. I thought that she was involved with another man, I said. Your uncle told you Amina and Adil were having an affair. Amina stumbled back as if struck. No, Hassan, I barely even knew him. I know, I said softly. He told me the truth before they took him away. He said he heard your mother yelling outside that night, accusing you of ruining the family reputation. He told me he couldn't leave you to die. Amina covered her face and sobbed. I was in the hospital for weeks, she whispered. Your family didn't come. You visited once. Just once, Hassan. He collapsed into a chair. I thought you were guilty. You thought wrong, I said quietly. Someone fed you poison and called it truth. Rayan clenched his jaw. So all this, our entire lives, were built on lies started by one man? Yes, I answered. One man with power. One man whose influence went unquestioned. One man who stole 3 futures, Amina's, mine, and Adil's. Amina looked at me suddenly. Zara, how did you know it was Adil who saved me? I never knew his name. I never saw him. I stared at the floor for a moment, then met her eyes. Because 2 days before he died, I said softly, Adil told me. She pressed her shaking hand to her mouth. He said he didn't regret saving you, I whispered. He said he didn't care about the burns. He said, if a woman screams, I run, that's it. Lena sobbed quietly. Rayan wiped his eyes. Hassan covered his face. I continued, that's why his death wasn't suicide, Amina. He was supposed to testify in your case. He wanted to expose your in-laws and the threats you faced. He wanted to show the officials photographs of the stove and the pipe. I paused. Amina looked horrified. What? What are you saying? I closed my eyes, steadying myself. The night before the hearing, he died. Silence, heavy, sharp, unbearable. I whispered, he didn't kill himself. He was silenced. Amina gasped. Hassan stood abruptly, gripping the table. No, this is too much. Are you saying... Yes, I said. Your uncle made sure Adil never spoke, because if he did, everything would have come out. Amina's voice cracked. He died protecting me. I nodded slowly. Yes, Amina. He saved you once from fire, and once more by dying with the truth. Rayan looked at his mother, then at me. So, all this time, you carried this alone? Yes. Why? He whispered. I looked at Hassan, at the man who had built a life with me out of illusions, at the man who hid a family, at the man who didn't know he had inherited a life paid for with another man's blood. Because no one, I said softly, would have believed a young woman's truth over a powerful family's lies. Amina stepped toward me, not with anger, not with shame, but with something heavier, gratitude, guilt, sisterhood. She fell to her knees. I am alive because of your Adil, she whispered. I had children because of him. I am sorry for everything that was taken from you. I knelt beside her and held her hands. You owe me nothing, I said gently. None of this was your fault. Hassan stared at us, 2 women whose lives had been twisted by the same lies, whose grief overlapped like scars. He whispered, Zara, what happens now? I stood slowly, calm, steady, resolved. What happens now? I repeated. Now you all learn the final truth, the truth even Adil didn't know. They stared at me, terrified, curious, breathless. I said softly, I didn't only lose something back then, I gained something your family never knew. Rayan frowned. Lena looked confused. Hassan blinked. Amina whispered, "What did you gain?" I inhaled deeply. The truth was ready. Prepared for 30 years, I spoke the words that froze them all. I wasn't alone in that loss. Someone survived, someone you all know. Hassan's face twisted. "Who?" he whispered. I looked at the three of them, Rayan, Lena, and Hassan, and said, "One of you." The room froze completely, as if every breath, every heartbeat, every memory paused at the same time. Amina's hand slipped from mine. Lena's grip on the back of the sofa tightened. Rayan took a step forward, not in anger, but in fear of the truth. Only Hassan found his voice, weak and trembling. "Zara, what do you mean, one of us?" I looked at the three of them, the children he kept hidden for 30 years, the children who sat silently absorbing their father's sins, and the truth that would change everything. I spoke gently. "After I lost the baby, the doctors told me something unexpected." Amina swallowed. "What was it?" "That I had been carrying twins." Gasps filled the room. Lena nearly dropped to her knees. Rayan went pale. Amina covered her heart. Hassan shook his head violently. No, Zara, that's impossible. You never told me." "You never asked," I said quietly. "Your family only wanted a wife, not a woman with a past, not a woman with pain, not a woman they couldn't control." I continued. "The doctors said one twin had died early, but the other—" My voice softened. "The other was alive." Silence shattered into disbelief. Amina stammered. But then, where is that child?" I exhaled slowly. "I had complications. Severe ones. The night they moved Adil's body, I fainted in the street. I woke in a government hospital, alone, disoriented, barely conscious." Lena covered her mouth. Rayan stepped closer, listening like his life depended on it. "When I woke," I said, "the nurse told me they had to transfer the surviving baby to neonatal care. I wasn't in a state to see him." "Him?" Hassan whispered, his voice cracking. "It was a boy?" I nodded. "A beautiful baby boy." Hassan blinked rapidly, trying to breathe. "But where did he go?" he whispered. "Why didn't I ever hear about him?" I looked right at him. "Because someone made sure you never did." Amina shivered. "Your uncle," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "Him." I continued. "When I was unconscious, your uncle visited the hospital. He told them he was my relative. He took control of the paperwork. He told the staff I was mentally unstable after losing my fiancé, and that the child needed to be placed with a more stable family." Lena gasped. No, that can't be true." "It is," I said. "I didn't find out until weeks later. When I recovered and went to the neonatal ward, the child was gone. They said he had been discharged to family." Amina covered her face and sobbed. Oh God. Rayan whispered, "So the baby was taken from you?" "Yes." Hassan's voice cracked. "Zara, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know." "I know," I said. "But ignorance doesn't erase damage." He shook his head, crying. "But where is he now? Who raised him? What happened to him?" I looked toward Rayan, and this time, my gaze didn't move. Rayan froze, his eyes widened. His breathing changed. He took a step back as if trying to escape the truth rushing toward him. "What? Why are you looking at me?" he whispered. Amina's hand flew to her mouth. Lena looked between us in shock. Hassan stood up abruptly, trembling. No, Zara, don't say—" I said it gently. "There was one woman in the neighborhood whose newborn had died the same week. A woman who had no children. A a woman who desperately wanted one. I faced Amina. Your cousin, the one who moved away. Amina staggered. She adopted a baby at that time. Yes, I said softly. A baby boy she said she found through a distant relative. Rayan's lips quivered. He whispered, No, that's not possible. Amina looked at him helplessly. Rayan! Hassan stumbled toward him. Son, wait! But Rayan stepped back. His voice broke. You mean she wasn't my real mother? I looked at him with every ounce of softness in my soul. She was your mother, I said gently. She raised you. She loved you. She protected you. But she wasn't the woman who gave birth to me, he whispered. No. He inhaled shakily. So that means... He met my eyes, barely breathing, eyes trembling, and in a voice so fragile it could break the world, he said, You're saying I'm your son? A deep, aching silence consumed the room. Slowly, painfully, I nodded. Yes, Rayan. Tears fell from his eyes in stunned disbelief. You're my baby, I whispered, choking up despite myself. You're the child stolen from me, the one I searched for, the one whose birthday I celebrated alone every year, the one I prayed for every night. Rayan collapsed onto his knees, not out of weakness, but out of the weight of truth crashing onto his young shoulders. Amina sobbed. Lena sobbed. Even Hassan's knees buckled. I walked to Rayan. Kneeling softly beside him, my voice broke for the first time in decades. You are my son! He cried into his hands, shoulders shaking uncontrollably. I never had a mother, he whispered. Not really. Not fully. I always felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I cupped his face with both hands. You belong to me, I said. Always. Even when the world hid you. Even when I didn't know your name. My heart knew you existed. He sobbed harder. He leaned forward, and I caught him in my arms. For the first time in 30 years, I held the child I'd lost. For the first time in his life, he felt the warmth he'd been searching for. The living room filled with the sound of grief, love, and reunion, raw and honest. Hassan trembled violently. How do we even begin to fix this? He whispered. I stroked Rayan's hair gently, tenderly. This, I whispered, is only the beginning. The rest of the truth must come out. The night after the birthday disaster felt longer than any I had lived in my 58 years. I sat alone in my bedroom, the wrapped box still on the dresser where I had placed it earlier. The box I had given him. The box he had refused to open when I handed it to him in front of his secret family. A husband of 30 years. A wife who had sacrificed everything. And a truth so vile that even the walls of our home rejected it. I undressed slowly, my fingers trembling as though the betrayal had entered my bones. When I lay down, the bed felt wide and empty, yet the air was full of ghosts. The ghost of our wedding day, the ghost of our laughter, the ghost of our dreams. I turned off the light. I couldn't sleep. The next morning, sunlight crept into the room like a thief, silent and unwanted. I heard noises downstairs, someone opening and closing drawers, footsteps pacing, a sigh, a curse under the breath. He didn't leave. A small, pathetic part of me wished he had. I sat up slowly, wrapped my shawl around me, and stepped out of the room. When I reached the staircase, I saw him. My husband, Rashid, standing in the living room with a half-packed suitcase. He turned when he heard me. His face was red from crying, his hair was disheveled. He looked like a stranger trying to disguise himself as the man I once loved. Good morning, he whispered, voice brittle. Why are you packing? I asked. He swallowed. I don't want to make things worse. I thought maybe I should give you some space. I stared at him. Then, Unexpectedly, I laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not a sane one either. A laugh that came from the ruins of my heart. Space? I repeated. You gave yourself space for 30 years, Rashid. He lowered his head. I walked past him into the kitchen and began making tea. My hands were steady now. Numbness had come like a cold blessing. From behind me, he spoke. They're gone. I didn't turn. Where? I sent them home. I told them to stay away until until we sort things out. I finally faced him. And how will you sort things out, Rashid? Will you hide another 30 years? Start another secret family? He winced. I deserve that. You deserve more than that. My voice was calm, too calm. He took a hesitant step toward me. Can we talk? Just talk, not argue. I can explain. Explain what? The logistics of betrayal? He closed his eyes, trying not to break again. I deserve your anger, but please, I need you to hear me. I folded my arms. Fine, talk. His confession. The real one. He sat down at the table. I stayed standing. You remember when we got married? He began, voice low. My mother was sick, and my father had debt? Yes. Well, before our marriage, when I was 28, my father forced me to marry someone else. My breath caught. Forced? He nodded. Her name is Karima, the woman you saw yesterday, and the children, the twins. They were babies then. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. You said you were never married before me. I lied, he whispered. I didn't love her. I begged my father to let me out of it. He only agreed if I paid off the entire family debt, which I couldn't. I sat down slowly, unable to stand anymore. So you married her, I said, voice hollow. Yes. But it was never a real marriage. We never lived together. I only visited sometimes. My father made it complicated. Complicated? I snapped. Rashid, you have a whole family. He nodded again, tears filling his eyes. I tried to divorce her, many times. But then she fell sick. The doctors said she had a heart condition. I couldn't abandon her. The kids were small. They needed support. He rubbed his forehead. And then I met you, and I fell in love with you so badly I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened. So you married me. Yes, I told myself I would tell you everything once Karima recovered, but she never fully did. And by the time I gathered courage, years had passed, then decades. And you expected me to understand? No, I expected you to hate me. He paused. And you should. The box. I looked at him, at this broken man who had broken me more. Rashid, I said softly. Do you know why I gave you that box yesterday? He shook his head. I stood, went to the dresser, picked it up, and brought it to him. Open it. His hands trembled as he slowly removed the lid. Inside, wrapped in white tissue paper, was a divorce letter. Prepared weeks ago, with my signature. He froze. Shock. Fear. Pain. He looked at me like the floor had crumbled under him. You planned this? He whispered. No, I replied. But I knew something was wrong. I knew you were hiding something big. I didn't know it would be this big. But I prepared myself. Tears streamed down his face. Please, he begged, falling to his knees. Don't leave me. I will spend the rest of my life making this right. I will tell everyone. I will fix every wound. Just don't leave me. I stepped back. He grabbed my hand, desperate. I love you. I never loved her. I never loved anyone but you. But love wasn't the issue anymore. Trust was. I pulled my hand away and whispered, Rashid, I need time. He nodded, still crying. Take all the time you need. I will not talk to you, I continued. Not for days, maybe weeks. I understand. And you will not come near me unless I call you. He bowed his head. Anything. I took a deep breath. Leave the suitcase. I don't want you to run away. I want you to stay and face what you've done. He wiped his tears. I'll do it. I'll face whatever you want me to face. I turned away from him, my heart still bleeding. He whispered again, Thank you for not leaving today. I didn't answer. For 3 days, I avoided Rashid. I lived inside my silence like a wounded animal crawling into a dark cave. I spoke to no one, cooked nothing, slept poorly, and kept my door locked. The divorce papers sat on my bedside table, reminding me that the life I lived had ended, long before I even realized. But on the 4th morning, something changed. I woke with a strange heaviness. Not anger, not fear, a quiet ache, a longing for answers only one woman could give. Not Rashid, her, the woman he married first, the woman he kept hidden, the woman who had lived a parallel life beside mine without my knowledge. Karima. I didn't tell Rashid I was leaving. I didn't want his explanations. I wanted hers, the journey. Her address was scribbled on the back of an old bank paper Rashid had accidentally dropped years ago, thinking I hadn't noticed. Back then, I assumed it was a client address. Now I knew better. I sat in a rickshaw, the morning air cold on my face, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. My heart thudded loudly, not with hate, not even jealousy, but with a grief so deep it felt like drowning. When I reached the small house, a simple faded building with peeling paint and potted plants, I froze. This was where part of my husband's life had been hidden for 30 long years. I took a deep breath and knocked. A moment later, the door opened. The other woman. She stood there, Karima, wearing a plain shawl, her face pale, her eyes tired. Older than me by a few years. Not glamorous, not threatening, just a woman who had cried too much. Her hand went to her mouth when she recognized me. You're Rashid's wife, she whispered. I nodded. We stood there for a long moment, two strangers connected by one man's lies. I'm not here to fight, I said quietly. My voice trembled. I just need to understand. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Please, she said, stepping aside. Come in. The house full of silent pain. The home was small, clean, modest. Family photos on the wall, her with 2 little children, later 2 teens, later 2 adults. Photos of a life I never knew existed. She brought me tea, but her hands shook so much she almost dropped the tray. We sat across from each other. She spoke first. I always prayed this day would never come. I swallowed. Why? Because I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. Her voice cracked. I begged Rashid to tell you. For years, for decades. I told him you deserved the truth. I blinked, stunned. You begged him? She nodded, wiping her eyes. I told him hiding me was unfair to you and unfair to me. But he was terrified of losing you, terrified you would leave. I stared at my trembling hands. He should have thought of that before he married me. Her lips pressed together. She looked like she wanted to say something, but hesitated. Please, I said softly. Tell me everything. Not as enemies, but as women. That broke her. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Her sighed, the truth I never expected. I never wanted to marry him, she whispered. I was 23. My father arranged it because Rashid's father promised a business deal I didn't love him. And he didn't love me. She took a shuddering breath. When we married, he was distant, kind but distant, like a guest in his own home. She looked down at her lap. Then I got pregnant, twice, and everything changed, not in the way I hoped. I felt my heart twist painfully. He visited only to bring money. He never stayed long. The children kept asking why their father never came to school functions or birthdays. A tear slipped down her cheek. I made excuses. I lied for him. She squeezed her hands together. When he told me he met you, he cried. He said he finally loved someone, truly loved. My throat closed. She looked at me, eyes full of broken memories. I told him to marry you. I pushed him to go. I wanted him to have the happiness he never had with me. I felt tears fall silently down my cheeks. And later, she whispered, when I fell sick, he kept supporting me financially, but he was never fully mine, and he was never fully yours either. Her voice shook. He lived in 2 prisons, mine and his guilt towards you. We both cried. 2 women, 2 victims, 1 man's fear, 1 life divided in 2. Her final confession. I want you to know something, she said, wiping her tears. I looked at her. She took a long, shaky breath. If I had known he never told you, if I had known you were living your whole marriage in darkness. Her voice broke completely. I would have left him. I would have freed him. I would have freed you. My chest ached. The heartbreak in her voice was more painful than anger could ever be. She reached out and held my hand. He loves you. That's the truth. But he destroyed both of us with that love. I squeezed her hand back. For the first time, I didn't see her as the other woman. I saw her as a woman betrayed just like me. A woman who carried a lie she never asked for. A woman who lived in the shadows so I could live in the light. Not out of malice, but out of hopelessness. We cried together until our tears mixed with the tea on the table. 2 strangers bound by sorrow. When I finally stood to leave, Karima followed me to the door. She looked fragile, drained, almost like a candle that had been burning both ends for 30 years. Please, she whispered, holding the edge of her shawl. Don't hate him, and don't hate me. I touched her arm gently. I don't hate you, I said softly. I hate the lies, not the people trapped inside them. She closed her eyes, tears escaping despite her effort to hold them back. If you ever need anything, she said, voice trembling, even if it's just answers, you can come. I nodded, and then, for the first time, she did something unexpected. She hugged me, a hesitant, broken hug. A hug that understood the weight of betrayal. A hug from one woman who suffered in darkness to another who suffered in daylight. Allah ease your heart, she whispered. And yours, I replied. Then I stepped outside, but I did not walk away alone. The children appear. The moment I reached the street, I saw them. 2 adults, her twins, standing by a parked car. A young man in his late 20s or early 30s, arms crossed, jaw clenched. A young woman beside him, shaking with anger or confusion, maybe both. They had been waiting. The son spoke first, voice sharp but trembling. You're... her? The second wife? I froze. The daughter stepped forward. Are you the one who took our father away? I felt the air leave my lungs. Not hatred, not blame, just hurt. Years and years of hurt in their questions. I didn't take anyone, I whispered. I didn't even know you existed. The son's face cracked, anger melting into disbelief. He didn't tell you? He asked, voice breaking. No, I said. He lied to me too. The girl covered her mouth, tears falling immediately. He lied to everyone, she whispered. Suddenly, Karima rushed outside. Stop it, she cried, grabbing her daughter. Not here, not like this. The son's shoulders shook with suppressed rage. For 30 years, he said to me, we only saw him in small pieces. Birthdays, school fees, money in envelopes, quick visits, Lies, excuses. His voice cracked. We hated you. My breath caught. We thought he loved you more than us, the girl whispered, eyes red. That you stole him. I stepped closer, tears burning my eyes. No, I said. I lived my whole marriage believing I was his only wife. He hid you from me, the way he hid me from you. They stared at me, and for the first time, I saw the truth settle into their hearts. The girl looked down. So we weren't replaced, she whispered painfully. We were hidden. Just like I was, I said. Silence. A deep, raw silence between us. Then the sun looked at me with a softness replacing the anger. I'm sorry, he whispered. Not for himself, not for his mother, but for all the years we all lost. I nodded, unable to speak. Karima wrapped her arms around both her children, pulling them close. They cried, she cried, and I cried too. 3 decades of pain spilling openly on a quiet street, a message from the past. As I turned to leave, the daughter called out softly, Auntie, wait. I turned back. She stepped toward me with hesitant, shaky steps. Father gave us letters, she said quietly. Letters he wrote for you, but never sent. My heart stopped. What letters? She opened her handbag and pulled out a small, worn envelope tied with faded blue ribbon. We found them in his drawer years ago, she said. We thought they were something private, so we never opened them. She placed the envelope in my hands. Maybe they belong to you. I looked at it as if it were a piece of fire. What's inside? I whispered. We don't know, the son replied. But maybe it's time you did. My fingers shook as I held it. 30 years of secrets, 30 years of pain, 30 years of unspoken truths, all wrapped in an old envelope. I clutched it to my chest. Thank you, I whispered. They nodded softly. No more hate, no more blame, just shared sadness. Returning home. By the time I returned to my house, the sun had begun to set. The sky was orange and bleeding into purple. A sky that felt exactly like my heart, ending something, beginning something else. When I opened the door, Rashid stood there. His eyes widened when he saw the envelope in my hand. Where did you go? He whispered. I didn't answer. His gaze fell on the envelope, his face drained of color. You found them, he breathed. I stared at him. You wrote them? He nodded slowly. I wrote many, he said, voice hollow. Every year, on your birthday, on our anniversary, whenever guilt drowned me. And why didn't you give them to me? I asked. He swallowed hard. Because telling the truth meant losing you. I stepped back, clutching the envelope. Maybe you should have thought of that, I whispered, before building 2 lives on one heart. He flinched, not from anger, from truth. The final line of part 8. I walked past him into the bedroom and closed the door gently. Then I sat on the bed and stared at the envelope. 30 years of hidden words. My hands trembled as I slid my finger under the seal. I took a deep breath and opened the first letter. And as I began to read, my entire world shifted. The room was silent except for my heartbeat, heavy, uneven, terrified. The envelope felt old, soft, worn at the edges. It had lived longer in darkness than I had lived in truth. Inside were several folded sheets, yellowed slightly with age, written in familiar handwriting, my husband's handwriting. Each letter had a date written at the top. The first one, dated just 3 months after our wedding. My hands shook as I opened it. I began reading. Letter 1, the beginning of his guilt. My love, I don't deserve to call you that. Not while hiding a truth that could shatter you. Every day I wake up next to you, I feel both blessed and terrified. Blessed because Allah gave me a woman like you. Terrified because the past I tried to bury still breathes behind me. I want to tell you everything. I thought many times to sit beside you, hold your hand, and confess the truth. But each time I imagine your eyes after hearing it, I lose courage. Forgive me one day if you can. I stopped reading. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. He knew even then. He knew the pain he would cause one day. And yet, he chose silence. I turned the page. Letter 2, the year everything changed, dated 2 years later. Today you told me you wished we could have children soon. My heart broke. How can I give you a child when 2 of mine already exist in a separate life? I am a coward. A man who failed you before giving you the truth you deserve. Maybe Allah will punish me through my own silence. A sharp pain stabbed my chest. I clutched the letter, my tears falling onto the ink. All those years, me wishing, me praying, me wondering why motherhood never came. Was this the answer? Was Allah protecting me? Or was He simply showing me what betrayal costs? I wasn't ready for the next letter, but I opened it anyway. Letter 3, the one that broke me, dated roughly 12 years into our marriage. You are 40 now. I see the sadness you hide when you look at other women with children. It is my fault. I took your right to know. I took your right to choose. Karima asked me again today to tell you the truth. She cried. She said she feels guilty. I told her I would, but I couldn't, because I knew the moment I told you, you would walk away. My breath hitched violently. He didn't protect me. He protected himself. He chose fear over honesty. He chose lies over love. I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed. Deep, shaking sobs I hadn't felt since my mother died. But there was more. I wiped my tears and opened the 4th letter. Letter 4, the day he nearly confessed, dated 7 years ago. You asked me today why I was distant. You touched my hand and said, if something is wrong, tell me. I almost did. I almost told you everything. But then you smiled at me with so much trust. I broke again. How can I be the man who destroys that smile? I shook my head. You destroyed it anyway, I whispered. The pain was too deep to hold, yet I opened the last letter, the one dated just before my recent birthday. Letter 5. The truth meant for my birthday. This one was shorter. Almost like he wrote it in a rush. Tomorrow is your birthday. I bought you a necklace, but I know it is worthless compared to what I owe you. I feel the weight of 30 years pulling me down. And tomorrow, I will break. I will tell you the truth. I cannot carry this sin anymore. If you leave me, I will understand. If you hate me, I deserve it. But if you stay, I will spend the rest of my life earning the right to stand beside you. Forgive me or don't, but know that I have only ever loved one woman, you. I dropped the paper. My heart felt too heavy for my ribcage. He was planning to tell me. He was finally ready, but fate had beaten him to it. It didn't change the pain, but it changed something inside me. A knock on the door. As I wiped my tears, there was a gentle knock. I didn't respond. Another knock. May I come in? Rashid whispered from the other side. I didn't answer. The door opened slowly. He stepped in, eyes swollen, face pale, breathing unsteady. He looked at the scattered letters on the bed. His voice cracked. You read them? I didn't speak. He came closer, but didn't dare touch me. I wrote hundreds, he whispered. Burned most, kept these. I couldn't give them to you. I couldn't lose you. My hands tightened. You lost me anyway, I said softly. He closed his eyes, pain twisting his face. I know, he whispered. I know. Silence, heavy, suffocating, real. Then I looked at him. Really looked. Not as my husband, not as the man who betrayed me, but as a man who had been running from himself for 30 years, dragging 2 families behind him. I spoke barely above a whisper. Rashid, why did you love me so much if you were always afraid of me leaving? He opened his eyes, tears falling freely. Because you were the first person who ever made me feel loved, he whispered, and the last person I ever wanted to hurt. But you hurt me the most, I said. He nodded. I know, and I will carry that sin until I die. The final moment of Part 9. I gathered all the letters into my hands and held them tightly. Then I said something I had never said in my life. I need to decide my future. He took a shaky breath. What do you mean? I looked at him, not with anger, not with hate, with truth. Whether I stay as your wife, I whispered, or whether I walk away forever. The room fell silent. His face turned white, and for the first time in 30 years, I held all the power. The house was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound too loud, the kind that reminds you how quickly life can shift from familiar to frightening. Rashid was still upstairs. The children were still in their rooms. But Karima's words, those stayed with me more than anything else. He never knew how to love. He only knew how to keep people dependent on him. Those words carved themselves inside me. I stood near the window, watching the faint orange glow of the streetlights spill across the road. The night looked calm, almost beautiful, but my chest felt tight, like someone had placed a hand over my heart and was slowly pressing down. I don't know how long I stayed there. Minutes, hours. Time had lost its shape. Then, I heard soft footsteps behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. The air shifts differently when you've lived with someone for decades. You can feel their presence even before they speak. Rashid stood a few feet behind me. For the first time ever, he didn't try to come closer. He didn't put a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say my name the way he always did when he wanted to soften a fight. He just stood there, quiet. Are you okay? He asked finally. The absurdity of the question forced a bitter laugh out of me. Am I okay? My voice cracked. I don't even know who I've been living with for 30 years. He exhaled sharply, like my words hit him harder than he expected. Everything I did to protect you. I turned slowly, my eyes burning. Protect me from what, Rashid? From the truth, from reality, from knowing the kind of man you actually are? His face twisted, hurt, defensive, desperate. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. My voice was low, trembling, and you kept doing it, every day, for 30 years. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His hands trembled slightly, whether from guilt or fear I couldn't tell. I thought, if I could keep both sides of my life stable, if I could keep everyone safe. Safe? I whispered. You call this safety? He flinched. I stepped closer, not in anger, but in exhaustion. Rashid, I lived my entire life believing in you. I defended you. I loved you without holding anything back. And you. My chest tightened again. I had to pause to keep my voice from breaking completely. You gave your honesty to someone else. He looked down at the floor. I didn't love her the way I loved you, he murmured. That's even worse, I whispered, because it means you destroyed her life, while pretending to protect mine. The silence that followed was suffocating. For a moment, I thought he might finally say something real, something honest, something human. But instead he whispered, I don't know how to fix this. I nodded slowly. I know. Because some things cannot be fixed. Some betrayals don't wound, they permanently alter the structure of a person's heart. I walked past him, heading toward the staircase. "Where are you going?" he asked, almost panicked. "To check on the children," I said quietly. "Someone has to." I didn't look back as I climbed the stairs, but I heard it, a sound that startled me, a soft, broken sob. From him. But I kept walking, not because I didn't feel it, but because I couldn't afford to feel sorry for him tonight. Not after the truth had finally torn open every corner of our life. Tonight. I needed to protect myself. For the first time in 30 years, I knocked softly on Anya's door first. A small, shaky voice answered, "Ami, can I open it?" "Yes, Beta." She opened the door just enough for her face to appear. Her eyes were swollen, her lips trembling. She looked younger than her 17 years, like the child she used to be when she ran to me after nightmares. "Ami." Her voice cracked before she even finished the word. I stepped inside and hugged her. Her body collapsed against me, soft, warm, fragile. She held onto my clothes like she was afraid I might disappear too. Why did Abba do this? Her question was a whisper soaked in tears. I closed my eyes. There are some questions no mother ever wants to answer. And yet, I had to. "I don't know, Beta," I said softly. "I really don't." Because it was the truth. The most painful truth. She cried silently into my shoulder as I stroked her hair, the way I did when she was a little girl. After a while, she pulled back, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Ami, are we still a family?" Her voice was small, hopeful, terrified. My throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. "Yes," I whispered, cupping her face. "No matter what happens between your Abba and me, you and your brother will always have a family." Her eyes softened, but the sadness remained. "Will Abba leave us?" I hesitated. 1 second, 2, 3. Then, "I will not let anyone abandon you. Not even him." Her lips trembled again. She hugged me tightly, as if my words were the only solid thing left in her world. Next, I went to my son. His door was half open. He wasn't crying like Anya. He wasn't shaking. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together, staring at the floor. A posture of anger, of betrayal, of disbelief. "Beta," I said softly. He didn't look up. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't respond at all. But then he whispered, "Is it true, Ami?" His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands, they were trembling violently. "Yes," I said gently. "It's true." His jaw tightened. "So, all those business trips?" His voice cracked slightly. "All those days he wasn't home?" I nodded. He let out a bitter laugh, sharp and painful. "I used to think he was a hero," he said quietly. "I thought he worked so hard for us. Thought he was someone I should try to become like." My heart shattered hearing that. "Beta," I whispered. "No, Ami," he said, finally looking at me, and his eyes were full of tears he was refusing to release. "He lied to you. He lied to us. He lied to that family too. He lied to everyone." His voice rose, not in rage, but in heartbreak. "How do you respect a man after this?" I sat beside him and gently took his hand. "You don't have to decide that tonight," I whispered. "Tonight, just breathe." He swallowed hard. "I don't ever want to be like him," he whispered. "Not even for a second." I squeezed his hand. "You won't be," I said softly, "because you're already stronger than him. You're brave enough to face the truth, even when it hurts." He looked down again, shoulders shaking. And then, like he was a small boy again, he leaned into me, his forehead resting against my shoulder, not crying loudly, not breaking down openly, just silently letting the truth empty out of him. And I held him. Both my children broken in different ways, both needing different kinds of comfort. And I needed to be strong for them. Even as pieces of me were slowly falling apart, the knocking didn't stop. It came again, hard, controlled, but urgent. Not the kind of knock that belongs to a neighbor, a delivery boy, or a relative. This was the knock of someone who expected to be heard, someone who had come for something. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Rashid stood frozen near the sofa, his breathing shallow, like every inhale hurt. Ania sprang closer to me, her hand gripping my arm. My son took a step forward, protective, tense. "Abba," he said quietly, "who is outside?" Rashid didn't answer. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He just stared at the door as if a ghost stood behind it. The knock came again. I whispered, "Rashid, should we open it?" He shook his head in a slow, terrified motion. "They weren't supposed to come here," he murmured. "Not like this." My son's eyes narrowed. "Who are they?" Silence. The kind of silence that tells you the truth is about to destroy everything. Finally, Rashid whispered, "They're from the past." Ania's grip on me tightened. The doorknob turned. We all froze. Whoever was outside was not waiting for permission anymore, but the door was still locked. Only the handle shook softly. A warning. My son moved first. He walked to the door quickly and placed himself between us and whoever was on the other side. "Step back," he told the person outside. "Who are you?" A low male voice answered. "Open the door." "We're not here to hurt anyone." The tone was controlled, firm, not familiar. Rashid suddenly spoke, his voice broken, pleading, "Please, go away. Not tonight and not in front of them." The man outside exhaled. "We don't have another night, Rashid. We gave you 30 years. 30 years. Exactly the number that had kept haunting us." My son glanced back at his father, eyes filled with rage. 30 years? He repeated. "Who did you betray for 30 years this time?" Rashid stepped forward quickly. "No, Beta, please, dash, don't open." Too late. My son unlocked the door. The hinges made a soft click. The door opened halfway, and standing outside were a middle-aged man, a woman around the same age, and a boy in his early 20s who looked just like Rashid. My breath left my body. Ania gasped so sharply it sounded like pain. My son stared as if punched in the stomach. The boy, tall, quiet, serious, looked directly at Rashid with eyes full of cold disappointment. "Assalamu alaikum, Abba," he said. The word Abba echoed through the hallway like a scream. Rashid closed his eyes. Pain and guilt washed over his face like a breaking wave. The older man stepped forward. "We didn't come here to fight," he said. "But it's time your real family learns what you owe us." Real family. My daughter flinched. My son's fists tightened, and I felt the floor shift beneath me. This wasn't just a hidden family. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was something deeper, darker. Something Rashid had buried for 3 decades. The woman, serious, calm, wearing a hijab, looked at me gently. "We didn't know about you," she said softly. "Not for years. We thought he chose us. We thought he would come back." My heart twisted. Rashid sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. The older man spoke again, his voice heavy, raw. He didn't just hide a second family. He didn't just cheat. He paused, looking at Rashid with disappointment, so deep it felt like grief. He left behind a crime. The room went silent. A crime. The word hovered in the air like smoke. Ania whispered, "Abba, what did you do?" Rashid finally looked up. Tears streaked down his face as he whispered, "I destroyed a marriage. I stole a child, and I lied to every one of you. My legs weakened. The walls blurred. Stole a child? My son stepped closer, voice shaking with fury. What child, Abba? Whose child? Rashid looked up at the boy at the door, and the boy's jaw tightened as he whispered, Me. Silence swallowed the room. Not the normal kind. This silence had weight. It pressed against our chests, made breathing difficult, made thinking impossible. My eyes moved slowly from Rashid to the boy standing at the doorway. His face, those eyes, the shape of his jaw, the way he stood, shoulders slightly tense but steady. He didn't look like a stranger. He looked like a ghost of a younger Rashid. He took a step inside, his voice calm but trembling. I am the child he left behind. Anya let out a broken sob. My son clenched the doorknob so tightly the veins in his forearms stood out. I felt my world tilt. The boy continued, softly but with a strength that only comes from a lifetime of quiet pain. My name is Hassan. Rashid's face twisted. Hassan, Beta, please. But Hassan held up a hand. Don't call me that, he said. I'm not your Beta. I'm a responsibility you abandoned. The older man, his uncle perhaps, placed a supportive hand on Hassan's shoulder. The woman wiped a tear discreetly. Rashid looked like he had been cut open. Hassan, I whispered, stepping forward gently. What do you mean he stole you? He looked at me. Really looked. His gaze was steady, respectful, but full of unspoken hurt. I was born into a broken situation, he began. My mother, Karima, was very young. My father, not so young. My breath caught. Rashid? I whispered. Hassan nodded slightly. Yes. The room spun for a moment. My lungs ached for air. Hassan continued. My mother thought he would leave everything and start a life with us. She believed every promise he made, every lie. The woman behind him, the aunt, closed her eyes for a moment, as if reliving the memory. When I was barely a year old, Hassan said, he told my mother he would take me for a few weeks so she could rest and recover from an illness. Rashid swallowed hard. And she trusted him. Hassan's voice broke for the first time. She trusted the man she loved. Anya covered her mouth, shaking. My son took 2 steps forward, anger darkening his eyes. And then, he demanded. Hassan looked straight at Rashid. He never brought me back. My knees weakened. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. He disappeared, Hassan said. With me. He blocked her family, changed his number, moved to another city, and when my mother finally found him, Rashid let out a strangled sound. Hassan's jaw tightened. She learned I was not living with him. A chill shot through me. What? I whispered, horrified. I grew up with her brother, Hassan said, gesturing toward the older man. Not with my mother. Not with Rashid. The uncle cleared his throat. He left the boy with us, he said. We raised him. Fed him. Gave him a home, while Rashid made a new life. My son turned toward Rashid, disbelief and fury merging into one. You took him from his mother, he said. And then you didn't even raise him? Rashid buried his face in his hands. I was scared, he choked. I didn't know how to undo what I'd done. I didn't know how to go back. I didn't know. You didn't know how to be a man, Hassan said quietly. Rashid flinched. Every time my mother came for me, Hassan continued, voice raw, you convinced her she wasn't ready. Convinced her that I was safer away from her. You broke her confidence. You broke her heart. The aunt wiped her eyes again, unable to look at Rashid. And then, Hassan added, you moved on. You married. You had more children. You decided to build a perfect life for yourself. He gestured toward us, while mine was left in pieces. I couldn't breathe. My children were trembling beside me. Hassan stepped forward, Just one step, enough to bring his voice closer, lower, more personal. I didn't come to take anything from you. His eyes softened. I came because my mother is dying. Rashid's head snapped up, horror flooding his face. No, he whispered. No, no, no. She wants to meet you, Hassan said. All of you. My heart hammered. All of us, I whispered. Yes, he nodded. She wants to tell you the truth herself, before she leaves this world. I felt the room closing in. Ania leaned against me. My son's fists clenched so hard they were shaking. Rashid looked shattered, and Hassan, he looked tired. So very tired. Then he said something that broke all of us. She doesn't expect forgiveness. She just wants her son to stop living in someone else's shadow. He looked at me as he finished. And she wants to look into the eyes of the woman who unknowingly lived the life she was promised. Hassan's final words hung in the air like smoke. She wants to look into the eyes of the woman who unknowingly lived the life she was promised. The room was still. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the clock on the wall sounded too loud, its ticking slicing the silence apart second by second. I could feel Ania gripping my arm, her fingers cold. My son stood rigid, breathing hard through his nose. And Rashid. Rashid looked like a ghost wearing human skin. He whispered, barely audible. Is she really dying? Hassan nodded once, sharply. She has weeks, he said softly. Maybe days. The doctors have stopped treatment. She wanted to see you before she goes. The aunt placed a hand on Hassan's back for support. The uncle's eyes glistened, jaw locked tight, trying to hold grief in place. I stepped closer, my voice gentle but trembling. Why now, after 30 years? Hassan met my eyes, steady, respectful. Because forgiveness doesn't wait forever, he said, and because the truth eventually demands witnesses. I felt something sharp inside my chest. Not anger, not pity. Something heavier, something like the weight of a story I never asked to be written in my life. I swallowed hard. What exactly does she want from me? Hassan hesitated before answering. She wants to give you her blessings. My breath caught. Blessings? I whispered incredulously. For what? For raising the man who should have been in her home, he said. For loving the man who broke her. For carrying a burden she never wanted another woman to suffer. I closed my eyes. I had prepared myself for anger, for confrontation, for accusations. But blessings? That was harder, sharper, more painful. My son stepped forward, anger in every line of his body. So she forgives our father? Hassan looked at him for a long moment. No, he said quietly. She forgives you. And your mother. You didn't lie to anyone. You didn't break anyone. You were just born. His voice softened, almost breaking. She wants peace before she leaves this world. And she wants you to have peace after she's gone. I felt tears rise, unbidden. This woman, this stranger, who had lost her child, lost her love, lost her dignity, lost her years. And now she was losing her life, yet she still wanted peace. I wiped my cheek slowly. What about you, Hassan? I asked. What do you want? His eyes flickered, something deep, something bruised. I want answers, he whispered. I want closure. A pause. And I want my mother to die with dignity, not with questions. Rashid finally stood, unsteady, broken, a man facing the ruins of his own making. Hassan, he whispered. I can come tomorrow, or tonight. Just tell me where. Hassan raised his hand again. No. His voice was firm. She doesn't want to see you alone. Rashid blinked. Then with who? Hassan turned toward me. You, he said gently. And your children." Anya gasped. My son clenched his jaw. I felt the floor shift under me again. "Why us?" I whispered. "Because she wants to meet the people who received every part of him," Hassan said. "His loyalty, his love, his lies, his commitment, his comfort." He stepped forward, and for the first time, his voice broke fully. "She wants to see the life she never had, so she can let it go." I covered my mouth as tears streamed down my face. Anya cried quietly beside me. My son looked away, his eyes shining with unspoken pain. The aunt sobbed silently in the doorway. And Rashid. He fell to his knees, not dramatically, not theatrically, quietly, as if his strength simply drained out of him. His hands trembled on the floor. "I ruined her life," he whispered. "I ruined everyone's life." No one contradicted him. No one comforted him. Pain was a language he needed to sit with now. After a long silence, I finally spoke, my voice fragile but steady. "Hassan, when does she want to see us?" His eyes softened with relief, like he expected rejection. "Tomorrow morning," he said. "Before noon." I nodded, even though the world felt unreal. "Where?" He swallowed. "The hospital. Room 312. Then he added softly, "She will be waiting." The house was quiet, so quiet that even the ticking of the hallway clock felt like a heartbeat echoing through empty ribs. The children had all gone to their rooms. Nadia and the twins were asleep. Huria and Imran were whispering behind their closed door. Even Abir, the girl who had stared at me with both fear and longing, had retreated into silence. Only one person paced the living room with restless footsteps. Haroun, my husband of 30 years, the man who had walked in on my birthday with an entire hidden family behind him. The man who had shattered my world, but expected me to hold the pieces together with polite smiles. I stood in the doorway and watched him. His shoulders rose and fell sharply with every breath. His fingers trembled. His eyes, usually so steady, were wild with a mix of guilt and desperation. He didn't notice me until I stepped closer. "Haroun," I said quietly. He froze as if he'd been caught doing something forbidden. "Are you okay?" he asked, but his voice cracked halfway. I almost laughed. He was asking me if I was okay. "I want you to sit," I said calmly. He obeyed instantly, like a man standing before a judge whose verdict he already feared. I sat across from him at the dining table. The same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and all the small victories of our life together. Tonight, it felt like a witness to betrayal. He rubbed his palms together. "I know you're angry. I know I destroyed everything." "Don't defend yourself," I cut in softly. "Just answer honestly." He swallowed hard, nodding. And then, for the first time since the storm began, I asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Why didn't you tell me the truth 30 years ago?" He looked up slowly, eyes red, face tired, soul exhausted, and then he spoke. "I was a coward," he whispered, "and I was young, stupid. I made a mistake. One mistake. I thought it would disappear if I buried it, if I built a perfect life with you." My fingers curled into fists on my lap. "One mistake," I repeated. "A mistake doesn't last 30 years, Haroun. A mistake doesn't grow into children. A mistake doesn't knock on our door on my birthday." He closed his eyes, unable to argue. I leaned back and took a slow breath. "What changed now?" I asked. "Why today? Why bring them now?" He hesitated. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Abir, she found me. She begged me to do the right thing before she went away." My heart tightened. "Went away where?" His voice broke. "She's sick, something serious. The doctors don't know how long she has." A silence heavier than grief settled between us. She wasn't just a stranger. She wasn't just the symbol of his betrayal. She was a daughter, my husband's daughter, carrying a burden no child deserved. And suddenly, everything made sense. Her trembling hands, her hesitant voice, her eyes searching mine for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe acceptance, maybe just warmth. Haroon wiped his face. She didn't want money. She didn't want property. She only wanted to know her father before her time ran out. My throat tightened painfully. "And the others?" I whispered. "The two younger ones don't know," he said. "They think it was just a normal visit. Only Abir knows the truth. Only she insisted I tell you. She said she didn't want to leave this world with lies." I closed my eyes. For the first time that night, tears spilled silently down my cheeks. Not for Haroon, not for myself, but for Abir, a girl living between truth and time. When I opened my eyes again, Haroon was staring at me, terrified of what I would say. "Haroon," I whispered, "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if our marriage can survive this." He nodded slowly, accepting the blow he knew was coming. "But," I continued, voice trembling, "I do know one thing." He looked up. "Your daughter is sick, and she needs peace more than she needs punishment." Haroon's breath hitched. I stood, wiping my tears. "We will deal with our marriage later, but tomorrow morning, I want to talk to Abir, alone." His eyes widened, hope and disbelief mixing like fire and rain. You'll talk to her?" he whispered. "Yes," I said firmly, "because whatever you've done, she is innocent." I walked toward my room, but before I closed the door, I said one last thing. "And Haroon, don't mistake my kindness for forgiveness. I'm doing this for her, not for you." The door clicked shut, and for the first time since the truth came out, I felt something. Not peace, not forgiveness, not acceptance, but purpose. Tomorrow, I would meet the girl he hid for 3 decades. Tomorrow, I would hear her story. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin. Morning came softly, like it was afraid to disturb the fragile peace inside the house. I woke up with a strange heaviness, not anger, not grief. Something deeper, quieter, a kind of ache that comes after a long storm when the world is still settling. The house was silent when I stepped out of my room. Everyone else was still asleep, except one person. Abir. She sat on the small sofa near the window, wrapped in a shawl, staring outside as the first sunlight touched her face. Her posture was delicate, her breathing shallow. For a moment she looked like a painting, beautiful but fading. I walked toward her. She turned quickly, eyes widening when she saw me. She tried to stand, but I raised a hand gently. "It's okay," I said. "Sit." She nodded, nervous. I sat beside her, not too close, but close enough for her to know I wasn't here to hurt her. For a long moment, we didn't speak, just breathed the same quiet air. Then I asked softly, "Your father said you wanted to meet me." She swallowed, nodding. "Yes, I did." "Why?" She looked down at her hands, thin, trembling, graceful, like they belonged to a child who had grown too fast. "I didn't come to break your home," she whispered. "I came because I didn't want to die carrying a lie. I wanted to know the woman who lived the life I never had." My chest tightened. "Are you very sick?" I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Stage 4. It's aggressive. They say maybe months, maybe less." My heart dropped. "And the others?" I asked. "Do your mother, your siblings, do they know?" Her eyes filled instantly. "No, I told only my father. I didn't want to be a burden. He already gave them so little. I didn't want to take more." I closed my eyes, shaking slightly at the cruelty of it all. How long have you known? I asked. 2 years, she whispered. I kept hoping, hiding, pretending. But last month, after another hospital stay, something inside me said it's time. She lifted her gaze to mine. Quiet, soft, pleading. I didn't come to ask for anything from you. I only wanted to see you once. I thought you might hate me less if you heard the truth. I felt something crumble inside me, not anger, not betrayal, but grief. Grief for a girl who carried her father's sin and her own suffering without complaint. Slowly, very slowly, I reached out and held her cold hand. She froze. You are not responsible for what your father did, I said, and you are not a burden, not to me. Her lips trembled. But I ruined your marriage. I hurt you. You did nothing, I said firmly. Nothing except survive a life you didn't choose. For the first time since she entered my home, a beer broke. She leaned forward, covering her face as sobs shook her fragile body. I wrapped my arms around her. She cried like a child, heartbroken, exhausted, apologizing through every breath. And I held her, not as a stepmother, not as a rival, not as a reminder of my pain, but as a woman holding another woman who had been carrying too much for too long. When she finally calmed, she whispered, I wanted to give you something. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small white envelope. I wrote this 6 months ago, she said. I didn't think I would be strong enough to say it aloud. My hands shook as I opened the letter. Inside, in weak handwriting, she had written, Thank you for the life you lived with him. Because you kept him stable, I was able to have a father, even from far away. If forgiveness is something too heavy, I understand. But if you ever find space in your heart, just remember me kindly. By the time I finished reading, tears blurred the ink. I didn't speak. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I took her head gently and rested it on my shoulder. She sighed, like she had finally found a place to rest. After a long moment, she whispered, Your husband loves you. I know he hurt you, but I saw how he looked at you last night. He's terrified of losing you. I closed my eyes. Love wasn't the problem. Trust was. And trust, once shattered, takes a lifetime to rebuild, if it ever rebuilds. Whatever happens next, I said quietly, it will happen after you get the peace you came for. She nodded against my shoulder. As we sat there in silence, holding on to each other like two broken threads trying to tie together, I remembered the box I had given Haroon last night, the one he hadn't opened yet. A box wrapped in red with a golden ribbon. Inside it was not anger, not revenge, not cruelty. Inside it was the final choice I had made before the truth came out. A letter that said, After this birthday, I want us to renew our vows. Not because life is perfect, but because we have survived every storm together. I had written those words before I knew about his secret, before I knew about a beer, before my world shifted. Would I still renew those vows? Would I still choose him after everything? I didn't know, not yet. But I did know one thing. This story wouldn't end with cruelty. Not mine, not hers, not his. Some endings are not about happily ever after. Some endings are about choosing compassion, even when your heart is broken. And that was my final gift. Not forgiveness, but humanity. The end.